Part 5, How Human Trafficking Intersects with the Gaming and Hospitality Industry. So this is the section of the training that will be specific to your work in the gaming and hospitality industry. First, we're going to cover red flag indicators and behaviors that are specific to human trafficking activity in the industry, and then highlight some things that resort staff might want to be mindful of. Casinos and hotels are also a destination for and can be a source of human trafficking activity. Sex trafficking survivors have reported that casinos were used as a meeting place for buyers, some of who were solicited online, and as a venue to solicit prospective new buyers. Traffickers are intent on maximizing profits, so hotel/casino properties can be appealing to them because potential customers may already have a room booked, and they don't have to assume that additional expense. On the other hand, traffickers want to evade getting caught and avoid bringing their illicit activities to businesses that have a reputation of having staff trained on how to recognize human trafficking and who are willing to report it to management and alert senior level management and report to law enforcement. Exploitation can be happening in the resort or hotel, and traffickers may be using the casino as a way to wash and launder the proceeds of their crime. Or simply they may be using the facilities as a way to occupy their time while the victim is in the hotel room with clients. The takeaway here is that casinos can also be a place of refuge for victims and survivors and offer them a secure location where they can feel comfortable to seek help or to try and escape their situation. Having staff trained on how to spot the signs of trafficking and publicly posting the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline number can offer someone the opportunity to leave a bad situation. And it's the intersection of those two that uniquely positions casinos and hospitality sector as another crucial ally in the fight against human trafficking. It's up to all of us to make our communities and workplaces inhospitable to traffickers, and we do this by getting trained, by knowing the signs of trafficking, by posting the hotline number and having clear reporting policies for staff. Another less discussed aspect of trafficking is the financial fraud and coerced debt that survivors often experience. Traffickers may force a victim to take out loans or put trafficking related charges in the victim's name. So things like hotels, rental cars, plane tickets, etc. And this is to really help keep the paper trail of the trafficking activity at an arm's length. This really means that trafficking often robs survivors of a healthy financial standing or footprint, making it incredibly challenging for them to do simple things like rent an apartment, receive a student loan to go back to school, or even secure gainful employment. We know that there are not enough supports for survivors across the country post-exploitation, and certainly not enough supports for survivors navigating the financial impact of their trafficking experience. It should come as no surprise that to individuals in the gaming and compliance industry that the sector is vulnerable to money laundering. Customer accounts at casinos can be used as conduits to transfer significant amounts of funds through financial transaction channels. Typically, after minimal or no gaming activity, a deposit of funds with a casino is then cashed out by a customer or transferred to a bank account. Human trafficking is largely a cash-based business, and organized traffickers need a way to legitimize and wash the proceeds of crime. A 2021 report from FinTrack found that both traffickers and victims conducted transactions at casinos. The report identifies a lull in the reports during the COVID-19 pandemic, likely due to Health Canada restrictions imposed on businesses in response. However, FinTrack did notice an increase in transactions involving online casinos in 2019 and 2020, and indicated that this is an upward trend in money laundering method for traffickers. Some potential suspicious activity may look like transactions at the casino that included cash purchases of casino chips, cash advances from player gaming accounts, and casino disbursements in cash or check. There also may be instances where one individual is transferring chips to other individuals and having them cash them out on their behalf. Another indicator are funds that are deposited to or withdrawn from a casino player's account with limited or no gambling involved, and the use of ATMs that are not owned by financial institutions. When it comes to players' gaming accounts, in the majority of cases, they took the balance of the cash removed from the account on the same day or within a matter of days. As it relates to online casinos, money laundering activity can look like frequent purchases and or payments to online gambling casino platforms, particularly if these funds were sourced from incoming email money transfers from multiple individuals. These purchases tend to occur late in the evening and early morning hours. This next section is going to focus on gaming specific indicators. Um, but before we get into those red flags, it's important to note that a trafficker may be with their victim, they may be on the premises somewhere else, or they may send a victim onto the casino floor alone or into the adjacent resort property to meet or find clients. Like I mentioned, traffickers may also be using casino amenities to launder the proceeds of crime, like we discussed on the last slide, or even just to occupy their time while the victim is meeting clients. Some victims may be unfamiliar with the rules, the protocols, or the culture of the gaming environment. Another important note before we look at some of the key indicators is that there is no standard outfit of choice to identify a victim of trafficking. As contradictory as that might sound, a trafficking victim may not appear out of place, they may not appear inappropriately dressed, and they may not appear distressed. Alternatively, they may appear inappropriately dressed for the occasion, the environment, or the time of year. And again, a quick note before we begin, but thinking about each indicator alone is not necessarily going to indicate that someone is being trafficked. Again, we really want you to consider the situation, the context, and overall patterns of behavior. Some potential indicators of trafficking in casinos can include a person who seeks permission from a third party for normal behaviors like ordering food, going to the washroom, and they might be not making their decisions independently. Perhaps they're being escorted. They aren't necessarily moving around freely or speaking freely. A person who is accompanied for or watched closely by a third party, they may remain in view and communicate via physical cues, or someone else might be speaking on their behalf. A person who provides scripted answers to casual questions, maybe they lie about their age, try to use a false ID, or they might leave the premises when they're asked for ID. They may refuse to cooperate. An individual might appear ill, uneasy in the company of others. They might appear uncomfortable or anxious, agitated, etc. They may express fear and intimidation through facial expressions or body language. The individual may display signs of anxiety, fatigue, fear, paranoia, submissiveness, tension around other people. They may have branding with the tattoos of the trafficker's name or symbol. It may be an individual who's making reoccurring or frequent trips to the gaming area and leaves with or is closely followed by different individuals. And an individual who may have lost a sense of time or unable to identify what region or city they are currently located in. Some other additional things to be on the lookout for. So an individual who has a heightened awareness of other patrons in the gaming area, potentially big winners, or patrons who are intoxicated. If the individual is overly observant or express interest about casino security and surveillance, they may avoid eye contact, again, may have someone else speak for them or taking physical cues from a third party. A young individual who is on site, so maybe in the hotel or restaurant, even though no age appropriate events are being hosted in the area. Victims of familial trafficking may be more likely to visit a family-friendly casino and resort property where they're more likely to blend in. Casino employees may witness individuals being subjected to verbal, physical, or emotional abuse, bullying, or demeaning treatment. There also may be visible signs of abuse, so cuts, bruises, burns, etc. Traffickers may recruit out of casinos and then return back to their vehicle with a prospective new victim. An individual who attends a casino regularly with different people but does not appear to be family or friends and has little to no gaming activity as well. Some other potential casino-based indicators may include an individual who does not have ID or whose ID is held by someone else. This person may also be asking casino staff or other patrons for food or money, again, with little or no gaming activity. An individual who accompanies different people to make cash withdrawals, and an individual who does not have their own money, their own gaming funds, or their funds are being controlled by a third party. Again, an individual who is attending the casino with little to no gameplay or gainful employment in the surrounding area. Some casino-based transportation indicators could include an individual who travels to the casino in the early morning and late evening with no hotel reservation, an individual who travels with another person who they might seem uneasy about, are controlled by, or who speaks on their behalf, an individual who frequents the same route but appear to carry on items, their person that they didn't have earlier in the day. Victims and traffickers might not sit together on the bus, but they may remain in view of one another and communicate via physical cues. Again, here we also may want to think about those general human trafficking indicators from part 1 of the training as well. It's really important to recognize that casinos and resorts are an ecosystem in and of themselves. When a business wants to think about making itself less appealing and less hospitable for criminal activity, it's important that we consider the entire ecosystem and all of its parts and look at holistic solutions. This means ensuring that bus drivers who operate the coach buses that bring patrons to the business are trained on how to spot trafficking, and that housekeeping and food and beverage staff are also part of building a wall of defense against this crime too. While laundering of proceeds is something that might take place at a casino, if there is a resort attached, there is also the chance that exploitation could be occurring on the premises. Hotels can be a location for both sex and labor trafficking in Canada. Hotels are an attractive location for traffickers to conduct business because it gives them privacy, discretion, and a sense of safety due to the anonymity of being a hotel guest. When we talk about behavioral indicators of suspected trafficking activity in the hospitality sector, again, we can encourage you to consider a pattern of activity or behavior as well as the overall context. So some potential hospitality indicators may include staff who notice or receive reports of excessive noise, i.e. television noise coming from or music coming from a hotel room throughout the day and night. Staff may notice an excessive amount of alcohol, illicit drugs, and or sex paraphernalia in the room. Cleaning staff might see that there's an excessive number of phones, computers, or swipe machines in the room. There may be frequent requests for linens and towels. Alternatively, there may be a do not disturb sign that stays on the room for the duration on the door for the duration of the stay, and that the guests may actually bar housekeep staff from cleaning or entering the room. Again, this slide has indicators that, depending on the context, could be totally innocent, but layered with other behaviors and indicators that we've already discussed in this training could indicate that something is amiss. For example, frequent low-value purchases at food and beverage areas, so like appetizers or add-ons instead of main courses, while on its own isn't strange, but perhaps coupled with someone who is being controlled and monitored or escorted might require some additional consideration from staff. Excessive food traffic in and out of a room at unusual hours, someone who might be loitering in the hallway or appearing to monitor foot traffic in the hallway. An individual who does not use the resort amenities, so the gym, the pool, the spa. Again, I've traveled to many hotels without taking a dip in the pool, but when we layer it with other behaviors and patterns of behavior, that's when things might start to be off or amiss. If an individual is observed frequenting more than one hotel room, again, this could be totally innocent. It could be a group of reservations for a family reunion and folks are visiting back and forth between the rooms. So by sharing these indicators, I hope it's becoming clear to you to understand how nuanced this is and how important context is. Some other potential indicators within the hospitality industry. So, an individual may walk around scoping out the security while looking for new clients. They may be spending most of their time in the bar, near hotel elevators, or corners of the property where there's a lot of foot traffic. They may be seen approaching patrons who they do not seem to share an existing relationship with and striking up conversations. They may be seen arriving with a group, but they don't really associate with others in the group while they're working. Individuals have few or no personal items, such as no luggage or bags. Really quickly, I wanted to touch on a significant labor trafficking case from 2019 that occurred in Ontario. Migrant workers from Mexico were recruited by a family operated cleaning company that subcontracted with hotels and resorts throughout Ontario's cottage country. The workers were promised work and education opportunities in Canada, but ended up living in crowded, unsanitary conditions and were subjected to having illegal fees deducted from their pay so that they were often only earning less than $50 per week. In total, 43 men and women were horribly exploited by this family run trafficking operation. Sadly, the resorts and hoteliers had no idea that this was happening to the men and women working alongside them. I share this story because it's important to understand that the hospitality businesses can be at risk for both sex and labor trafficking activity. In 2023, it's no longer acceptable for a business to say that it didn't know. Businesses need to do their due diligence to understand the ethics associated with supply chain related compliance for both goods and labor. I also want to talk about the importance of implications for businesses who either turn a blind eye to trafficking or fail to ensure that their businesses and property have taken the necessary steps to implement safety protocols when there are suspected trafficking situations occurring. In the United States, particularly, there have been a number of high profile civil suits against hotels which have failed to intervene in trafficking situations, some of which involved minors. While we haven't seen this type of civil suit here in Canada quite yet, it's not outside the realm of possibility. We also know that there have been instances where staff have been reported to have acted as brokers, facilitating meetings between trafficked people and potential buyers. And this is where background screening of employees is really crucial, as well as clear internal reporting policies for staff. Human trafficking incidents can bring the business negative publicity, which carries reputational risk. And failing to address serious safety issues can negatively impact the morale of staff, can result in high turnover rates, and ultimately affect the profitability of the business.